Hello, my name is Melissa Meredith, and I will be reviewing a book about a young missionary's journey of selfless service in the face of true suffering. The book is entitled The Life and Diary of David Brainerd, and the book is a collection of personal diary entries and public journal logs written by David himself and edited by Jonathan Edwards, yes, the Jonathan Edwards, who was a close friend and confidant of David's and who took care of David during his last days. In looking at the historical issues relating to the book, David took pen to diary during the first wave of the Great Awakening, which was emerging through New England, which lasted from about 1730 to 1743. And the Great Awakening, if you remember, was a series of religious revivals in American history during the 18th and 19th centuries. Now, the first wave of these revivals, led by Jonathan Edwards himself and George Whitefield, among others, sought to not only engage a religious intellectual response from their congregations, but also a strong emotional response and enthusiasm as a means of evidence of their faith and pursuit of Christ-likeness. As was in other areas of New England, tensions were beginning to emerge between opposing sides, including Yale College, where David was a student. In looking at the contextual issues relating the book, it is important to note that David's personal diary entries were just that. They were personal. He never intended them for public consumption. Rather, they were for him a personal discipline of sorts, a means of self-examination and reflection on his own personal Christian life. It was Jonathan Edwards who persuaded David to release the diary to him upon his death at the age of 29. His journal logs were, however, written for the public consumption and were addressed specifically to his organization, his mission organization in Scotland. The two sections of the book, his diary and his journal, take on two very different tones. One is very introspective, and one is spoken with authority. Now, Jonathan Edwards states that his purpose in collecting a book of David's life and diaries was to, and I quote, "The reader will have an opportunity to see not only what were the external circumstances and remarkable incidents of the life of this person, and how he spent his time from day to day, as to his external behavior, but also what passed in his own heart." Edwards' purpose was to share with the world an example of what it meant to live a self-denying life and labor before the Lord, as did David Brainerd. Now, the book is broken up into three parts. The first section outlines Brainerd's birth, his study at Yale, his license to preach, his exemplance from Yale, his appointment as missionaries to the Indians, his ministry with the Conomique Indians, his ordination, and his ministry with the Crossweek-Sung Indians. Now, the second section is a look into Brainerd's personal journal during his time with the Crossweek-Sung Indians and the Delaware Indians. And the final section outlines his end of his missionary efforts and up until his death around 1747 when he was 29. While he never intended his diary to be public, Brainerd and subsequently Edwards argues for the holy pursuit of Christ-likeness in the day-to-day life of the Christian. Brainerd possesses a melancholy personality and succumbs to several bouts of depression, which we read in the book. In his pursuit of holy living, Brainerd teaches, although unaware at the time of his writing his diary, that the Christian life is worth it in the end. In the end, all that matters in the life of a Christian is to serve God with their whole heart, their mind, and their spirit, giving glory to God in everything, even among suffering. Although Brainerd was a man that was overcome by his own wretchedness as a sinner, his imperfections, his inadequacies as a minister of the gospel, and what he would say ignorant in every way, his life was a true fragrance of one who feared the Lord. He tasted the goodness of the gospel of Jesus Christ. He savored the spiritual disciplines of reading, studying, meditating, and praying upon the word, fasting, secret prayers as he would call them, teaching the word to congregations, he had many during his day, discipling and evangelizing among the Native Americans of New England. To give you just a taste of his writings, here are two vastly different entries, and then we'll give you just a taste of his personality. This first is from Monday, April the 12th. This morning, the Lord was pleased to light up the light of his countenance upon me in secret prayer, and made this season very precious to my soul. Though I have been so depressed of late, respecting my hopes of future servableness in the cause of God, yet now I had much encouragement respecting that matter. I was especially assisted to intercede and plead for poor souls, and for the enlargement of Christ's kingdom in the world, and for special grace for myself to fit me for special services. I feel exceedingly calm and quiet, resigned to God, respecting my future employment when and where he pleased. My faith lifted me above the world and removed all those mountains that I could not look over of late. I wanted not the favor of man to lean upon, for I knew Christ's favor was infinitely better, and that it was no matter when, where, nor how Christ should send me, nor what trials he should still exercise me with, if I might be prepared for his work and his will. I now find revived in my mind the wonderful discovery of infinite wisdom and all the dispensations of God towards me, which I had a little before I met with my great trial at college. Everything appeared full of divine wisdom. The very next entry is this. Tuesday, April 13th. I saw myself to be very mean and vile, and wondered at those that showed me respect. Afterwards I was somewhat comforted in secret retirement, and assisted to wrestle with God with some power, spirituality, and sweetness. Blessed be the Lord, he is never unmindful of me, but always sends me needed supplies. From time to time, when I am like one dead, he raises me to life. Oh, that I may never distrust infinite goodness. And sincerely humble man, Brainerd's understandings of his own need of saving grace and his love of a sovereign God led him to live a life of unrelenting labor for the Lord, despite enemies, illnesses, and ministry trials and tribulations. Now, like a book, this book does have its weaknesses. Brainerd succumbed to many periods of melancholy, depression, and sad trials in his ministry and college career. As such, the book is hard to engage at times, as Brainerd speaks openly and honestly, holding nothing back of his feelings of vile hatred toward himself. At times, it's almost painstakingly to read his accounts of his personal struggles with God and his own salvation and sanctification. However, his absolute desire to please God outweighs these sections, and readers are found wanting to uncover more of Brainerd's wisdom and experience in ministry. To be sure, this book has left a legacy for Christians. From its first print date in 1949, it has continued to stay in print. The words written have influenced and inspired the likes of missionaries such as Jim Elliot, Adoniram Judson, William Carey, and Henry Martin. In fact, this book has been required reading for missionaries for over 150 years. This comes as no surprise because missionaries will find encouragement, affirmation, comfort, and they'll also be challenged by Brainerd's selfless service in the face of suffering. Missionaries will find encouragement in Brainerd's own feelings of inadequacies in teaching the gospel. They will find encouragement in hearing about his own accounts of feeling deserted by God, struggling with inward conflicts and enemies of the faith, and be challenged by his arduous and unrelenting pursuit of sanctification and service to God. To be sure, this book is a must-read for those who have felt the call to missions, are a missionary on the field now, or have a passion for missions. In it, readers will be met with a candid look at a young missionary's journey in walking with the Lord through trials and tribulations and finding complete satisfaction in the sovereign God. As Brainerd would say, to God be the glory, his ultimate purpose divine, for our good and for his glory.